Okay, it is 11:30 on this Sunday morning, and just into 11 Alive News, the National Hurricane Center has noted that this is now no longer tropical depression, but now Tropical Storm Idalia. So the hurricane hunters have been out. This is one of many missions of surveying this storm, the Gulf waters, and the atmospheric conditions out ahead of it, but they found winds of 40 miles per hour within this storm. So that now reaches that tropical storm threshold versus just being a tropical depression. So Tropical Storm Idalia has formed. In terms of the gusts, 45 miles per hour right now, and it has been meandering around just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula and not having much steering current action. And what that means is tropical systems get steered by larger picture weather centers, or rather weather systems. Dips in the jet stream, big areas of high pressure, they get steered. They don't know where to go on themselves, by themselves. And this system doesn't have much in the way of steering currents to move it anywhere over the next 24 hours. So it's going to kind of park itself here. But once we get into Monday morning, Monday afternoon time frame, the window is going to open up for this to have some forward movement. And it moves into the Gulf of Mexico, and it has the potential to strengthen a lot. So again, Tropical Storm Idalia just formed. This is 40 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, and the hurricane hunters still inside us investigating it. One of many missions for the day today, and they're not just investigating this storm. They've also got Franklin that they're looking at, and in order to get the best representation of where this storm will go and how strong it will be at landfall, they're also issuing some special weather balloon releases for the day today, and I'm sure they'll do it into the next couple days at a few locations across the southeast to better sample the atmosphere and the different steering current components that we're going to be dealing with. So this is the new track in from the Hurricane Center. The difference this morning versus even the 5 o'clock update is that where the center of the storm is right now, being that it has been meandering around, is actually a little further south than what a lot of our weather models were even showing it yesterday to be at. So that has kind of changed the track and trajectory that you're going to see here. Winds right now 40 miles per hour. As it makes its way past that western tip of Cuba, we expect it to strengthen. There's nothing but warm water right here. Once it gets kicked northward, it will get a lot of warm water and not a whole lot of wind shear to deal with, especially by Tuesday time frame. So this thing will strengthen. So you notice there by Tuesday afternoon or evening becoming a hurricane. So that would be the third hurricane of the Atlantic season. 85 mile per hour winds right there is the official forecast. But I want you to take all that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Then you notice the cone of uncertainty as it widens closer to landfall. They have that landfall time frame as sometime early on Wednesday. And no, it's not necessarily going to be directly in the center of this. It could be anywhere between Tampa, kind of that St. Pete Clearwater area, and all the way back to parts of the Emerald Coast. This is where we have Panama City Beach and Destin area. So that's where the center of the storm will head based on our latest weather model data that we have. However, as we know with tropical systems, those impacts can be felt well outside the center. And in particular, on the eastern side of these storms, that's what we call the dirty side. That's where we have not just the strongest winds, but there's often a severe weather component that kicks in as these storm systems are making landfall. So as it's approaching the coast of Florida, this whole Florida peninsula right there, we'll likely see kind of squally weather, the outer feeder bands eventually, and that tornado threat as well. Now, where does it head from landfall? Well, it's going to be steered further east. So that cone of uncertainty, which is again anywhere that the center of the storm could go. Right now in this latest 11:15 track, they have it anywhere from central Georgia down to off the Georgia coast altogether. So the center of this storm might head through Georgia, might also stay off the coast, but the impacts can be felt outside of it. Now, if you're wondering, if you're watching us from North Georgia, which is where 11 Alive our studios are, you're wondering, well, we're not in it at all. Well, yes, that's the case. However, some of our models bring that center on the western side of that cone, and if that happens, we would see more rain potentially from this system. But if the models keep nudging it further east, we would see fewer impacts. We would see a lower chance of rain out of this if the models shift everything further west and that landfall ends up happening and it doesn't get steered east as quickly. Well, then we see increased impacts here, and that's the way these tropical systems go. It's all based on the steering currents, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. I've plotted here, this is what we call 500 millibars for those who might follow like weather geek language. But this is kind of what's happening with the steering currents in our atmosphere with this system. This is a Tuesday into early Wednesday time frame. As we have the hurricane in the Gulf, it's going to get steered east in between these two players. Now, as it starts to make its way northward, it's getting steered by this little extension of the subtropical high over the Atlantic. But then once we get into the Gulf, you noticed in that cone of uncertainty, it kind of made a jog to the east. That's because there's this incoming dip in the jet stream. It's going to help to kick it out eastward. So when does that dip arrive? How far north can this get before that happens? We still don't know. You know, that's how these things go. We have to track little fine changes in the models today, which might mean bigger implications down the road. But those are the steering currents that we're working with. Big dip in the jet stream, and that same dip in the jet stream has a little cold front associated with it that's kind of stalled over the southeast as well. So spaghetti models, these are what our models think this thing's going to go, where the center of it goes. And I'm showing you this because this is a better look at what are the possible solutions. And it shows you what the uncertainty is as we get further out in time. The consensus, where a lot of these are clustered, that's kind of where that cone of uncertainty is right now, which is from Apalachicola all the way around through the Big Bend. But you see a couple of outliers to the east, couple of outliers to the west, and that western outlier kind of track, if it did nudge further to the west, again, that would mean more impacts for us here in North Georgia. But as of right now, we don't expect high impacts. We do think that rain is possible, especially south and east of Atlanta. But that would be a Wednesday to early Thursday time frame, and it's Sunday. A lot changes between now and then. One thing we do know for certain is as this thing makes it into the Gulf of Mexico, it will strengthen. And two things that tropical systems need to really thrive is, number one, really warm ocean waters. They get their energy from the release of latent heat. And these ocean temperatures, or the Gulf temperatures rather, these are the surface temperatures. They're up in the mid and upper 80s. Tropical systems just need the low 80s to keep going. Once you get into the upper 80s, that's a lot of extra energy for these systems to strengthen. And that's what we often see, is that these warm waters play a role in potential rapid intensification. So that's one thing that we have to keep a close eye on, is if we can see this playing, kind of, you think of it as a scale, tipping the scale, what's going to play a bigger role. Other thing that tropical systems need is a lack of wind shear or disrupting winds, because those disrupt the circulation in these tropical systems. We do think as we get into the Tuesday time frame, we won't see too much wind shear impacting it, and that's why, again, they have that strengthening officially into a Category 1, winds of 90 miles per hour approaching landfall. Take all this with a grain of salt. So if you don't live in Georgia and you're watching us here on YouTube, and you live, or you have maybe a vacation home somewhere on the coast of Florida, anywhere from, you know, this Gulf Coast of Florida, doesn't matter how far south you are, you got to pay attention to this, because there will be some impacts and you got to watch these very closely. So now we're several days out still from landfall. That landfall would happen on Wednesday, but now's the time to start thinking about those preparations. What do you got to do? How do you got to get your house ready? And go ahead and, you know, if you do live in one of those immediate evacuation zones, now's that time to start thinking about, what would I need to pack? And normally if you live along a hurricane kind of route along the coast, right along the coast, you often have that hurricane plan ready to go. But here in North Georgia, we often see impacts from tropical systems, but of course we're about 250, 300 miles away from the coast, so we don't quite see them making landfall here, of course. Let's talk about impacts from North Georgia, though. This is a model comparison of rainfall. And why am I showing you this? Is because I talked about earlier where that track ends up going. Is it going to be on the western side of the track? Our model's going to shift back to the east. Well, here's already a model difference between the American and the European models with how much rain we'll see here. And that all has to do with where do these models have the center of the storm going. The American model over here, it brings it a little further west. So what that does is it bumps up the potential rainfall over the next week. east of Atlanta. It has some rainfall totals, 3, 4, even 5 inches. European model, it is running further east in terms of the track of the center of Idalia. So with that, it has lower rainfall totals, just about 1 inch to 2 inches over the next week. So we still don't know how much rain we're going to get. We do think that we could see some rain out of this system, but if the track shifts further east, that means lower impacts for us. If it shifts further west, that means more potential impacts. But as of right now, all of our models have the center of that storm staying east of us. That means we're not on the dirty side, as we like to call it. So that means the severe weather aspects, when we can see sometimes some inland tornadoes with tropical landfalling systems. We're just not seeing that in the cards for us right now. Let me show you the rain chances for us here. This is again the Atlanta metro area and North Georgia. This is not other parts of Georgia that will likely see widespread rain as Idalia moves in. We've got 40% chance today, 60% Monday, Tuesday. We got a front draped on top of us, stalled out. Then those rain chances stay elevated Wednesday, Thursday. That is all contingent upon the final track of Idalia. Okay, let's talk about severe weather chances as well. Fronts on top of us. It is hot. It's humid outside. We got a heat advisory today as well. So that's energy for storms the next couple of days for us. So today, tomorrow, damaging winds possible in addition to heavy rain with any storms that pop up. So I just want to show, while we're focusing on the tropics, we're also focusing on local impacts here in North Georgia with rainfall. The rainfall impacts we would get from the storm, that would be Wednesday, Thursday time frame if things hold. In the meantime, it's a front draped on top of us that brings us the storm chances. So a few pop-up storms today. This is scattered in nature. Not everybody gets one, but they could last at any point during the afternoon or evening. For Monday, very similar today, just a little better coverage of the showers and storms. So we've given that rain chance 60% for tomorrow. I do think pockets of heavy rain, a bigger deal for Monday than what we're going to see today. Tuesday, very similar. Fronts draped on top of us, another round. Showers and thunderstorms are going to be likely. And again, if the center of Idalia moves over us, then we would end up seeing, or gets closer to us, then we would see more rain moving in for late Wednesday into Thursday. So that would be a Wednesday, Thursday time frame for us. All right, also in the tropics, this is an update here at 11 o'clock this morning. Franklin is strengthening. In fact, signs show this might be undergoing some rapid intensification here over the next 24 hours. This is now up to 100 mile per hour maximum sustained winds. Category 3 starts at 111, so we're not far off of that. Hurricane hunters found Franklin stronger this morning. They've been surveying that storm as they're also surveying our other storm moving past the Yucatan Peninsula. Gusts are 120. This one is moving quickly though. Well, quickly, 8 miles per hour. It's quicker than Idalia is moving right now. But this is going to become a major hurricane. You see this? They've actually got it all the way up to a Category 4 storm. Bermuda is right here. So likely the center passes west of Bermuda, but when we see these larger storms that pass west of Bermuda, close enough to the U.S., even though it's not moving over us directly, one of the things that these storms do is they upwell a lot of swells in the ocean. So that creates higher rip current threat, especially into Monday, Tuesday time frame, much higher threat of rip currents there off the eastern coast, and also the surf will be rougher. Not only that, we also have a full moon on Wednesday. So as this is passing by, that also plays to onshore winds and more gravitational pull. So a little higher than normal tides expected this week there on the east coast. Okay, so we've got Idalia. We have got Franklin, and still a long way to go with hurricane season. We're nearing that peak, which is September 10th, and hurricane season doesn't officially end until November 30th. So again, we're going to back up here and I'll just show you again the track of that storm. We'll go to the very beginning if we can here. We've got our newest tropical storm, which just formed at 11:15 this morning, Idalia. And Idalia is going to move into the Gulf of Mexico. Here it is right here, become a hurricane as early as maybe even Tuesday morning. You see that 70 right there on the max winds at Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. Hurricane status is only 74. So we'll see how quickly it becomes a hurricane. Moving over warm waters, making a landfall early Wednesday, and then getting steered further east. So we don't know the final track of this system, don't know the final threats. If you're in North Georgia, we're watching it for rainfall potential. If you live anywhere in Florida, right along the Gulf Coast, please, please, please pay attention to this forecast closely. Be ready to take those necessary steps if the storm track holds and you're in the line of direct impacts.